The Japanese are known for their extreme game shows, many of which have put their contestants in physical and psychological danger to provide their audiences with a unique viewing experience. In the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a broadcast that many believed to be the most radical and potentially unethical instance. This aired on a Tokyo-based network called Nippon Television. The show is titled Suzunu Denpa Shounen, and it consisted of a live stream of a single room. Inside the room was a stack of envelopes, a rack of magazines, water, a gas burner, and one man who was asked to undergo one of the most rigorous endurance performances ever broadcast. In January of 1998, Nasubi, which translates in English to eggplant, was chosen from a raffle of approximately 20 applicants for a contest titled A Life of Prizes. After winning, Nasubi was escorted to a space no bigger than a small studio apartment. He was asked to begin the game with absolutely nothing, including his clothes. He was given only water, and in order to provide himself with food, clothing, or any means of entertainment during his stay in the room, Nasubi must win them via sweepstakes. The sweepstakes could be found in the stacks of magazines, which he could enter by mailing contest applications using the envelopes provided. This was the point of the game, to survive solely on his contest prizes. Once Nasubi's winnings reached a monetary value of 1 million yen, or roughly $9,000, he was declared the winner and allowed to exit the room, resume his life, and enjoy his newfound celebrity. So did Nasubi succeed? That all depends on how you define success. To answer this question, let's take an in-depth look at Nasubi's time inside the room. Immediately upon being left alone, Nasubi's priority was to cover himself. And the very first contest he applied for during this first episode of the live stream was an apron. Not only did he not win the apron, but during his entire 15-month-long stay, Nasubi remained completely nude. The majority of his time was spent submitting contest applications. In the first month, Nasubi applied to 5748 sweepstakes. While waiting for notifications of his first winnings, Nasubi was taunted by fortune. He answered the phone to misdialed callers, and during one frustrating afternoon after several days without food, a ramen delivery boy knocked on Nasubi's door by mistake. But after many days of waiting, becoming desperately hungry, Nasubi finally won his first prize, 12 pots of fiber jelly, which he immediately began eating. His second prize was 5 bags of rice. Unfortunately, he quickly realized he didn't have a pot to cook it in. After failing to eat the rice raw, Nasubi discovered he could cook the rice in an empty fiber jelly container by setting them close to the stove burner. For the month of February, Nasubi continued to win the following: 1,000 yen body soap, canned spaghetti, subsequently realizing he didn't have a can opener for the meat sauce. Despite many prizes having little or no practical value, Nasubi seemed grateful for everyone he received. And it's no doubt that with an entire waking life consisting of little more than filling out contest applications, the brief adrenaline rush of the knock at the door became his only source of excitement. Nasubi's basic needs, of course, had to be met, so food was of paramount importance. Although let's remember that the higher the monetary value of the prize, the closer Nasubi was to his 1 million yen goal. Reaching this goal proved incredibly time-consuming. To get halfway there, it took Nasubi 6 months and 38,000 contest entries. During this time, some notable prizes include a bicycle, which, once the initial excitement wore off, he remembered had no practical value. In his tiny room, he rode it around briefly, then never again on the live stream. Panties, which were his first article of clothing, although they didn't fit, a stuffed seal, which he named Banasu, befriending it, a 14-inch TV set, although there was no antenna or cable, so all he could view was static. A toothbrush and toothpaste, which allowed him to brush his teeth for the first time during his 3-month stay. Around the 6-month mark, the show had become incredibly popular, and the local news media somehow discovered where Nasubi's secluded room was located. So producers woke Nasubi in the middle of the night, blindfolded him, and escorted him to a new, yet nearly identical room. Before this moment, A Life of Prizes was broadcast on Sunday nights and edited down to a 10-minute weekly summary. But with this room switch, producers decided to offer a live web stream alternative, causing them to digitally follow Nasubi around with a joystick in order to censor his genitalia. As you can see, the quality of the live stream is primitive, but keep in mind this is in the late 90s. It took Nasubi another 3 months to get 2/3 of the way to his 1 million yen goal. And throughout the months of August, September, and October, Nasubi submitted an additional 17,000 contest entries. Notable winnings include a watermelon tickets to see Spice Girls the movie, a VHS player to go with the TV set. He had won several months back. After this expensive win, Nasubi hit a string of bad luck. At one point, he went a week without hearing a knock at the door, and during one drastic period, Nasubi completely ran out of food. Rather than rescuing him and risk spoiling the tension of the show, producers opted to relocate Nasubi a second time in hopes that the change would bring about good luck. This new location did indeed prove lucky, as Nasubi won several very valuable prizes, including a PlayStation, which he played non-stop for 4 days straight. But he soon banned himself from it after recognizing it as a distraction from filling out contest entries, a tent which he lived in for several days, but whose sheer size prevented him from doing his dance of gratitude during his winning moments. Worried he would appear ungrateful, Nasubi disassembled his tent and put it away. In the month of December, Nasubi won a very expensive set of automobile tires, a 10,000 yen gift voucher, and finally putting him just over his 1 million yen goal, a small bag of rice. And after 335 straight days of nothing but sleeping, eating food when available, eating dog food when there was nothing edible available, answering the door, and most importantly, filling out contest entries, Nasubi had finally won. Or had he? At this point, the ratings of the show hovered somewhere around 17 million Japanese viewers. For comparison, the highest watched episode of Game of Thrones sits at 16.5 million viewers. The people absolutely loved it, and the producers were making millions. The notion of it just yet was ridiculous. So in the middle of the night, the producers woke Nasubi, showered him with confetti and streamers, and announced that he had finally won the contest. They returned his clothes, but Nasubi hadn't worn clothes in almost a year, and upon dressing, he realized he developed a distaste for them, citing them as being itchy. Although Nasubi was under the impression that the show was over and his trip to a Korean carnival was a celebratory holiday for his hard work, little did he know that the producers had no intention of allowing him to go home. Yet, while still in Korea, Nasubi was blindfolded once again and guided to a fourth room, which consisted of the familiar magazine rack, stack of envelopes, and a Korean-Japanese dictionary. Despite not knowing the language, Nasubi was nevertheless instructed to put his Korean-Japanese dictionary to work. Applying for contests, his new goal was to earn enough prizes to equate the price of a plane ticket back home to Tokyo. It needed to only be a one-way economy class ticket. After translating and applying to nearly 7,000 contests, Nasubi met his monetary goal in just 2 short months. But this all happened too quickly, so producers required him to make another 9,000 yen in order to upgrade his ticket to business class. And Nasubi accomplished this by winning 2 bags of incredibly rare and expensive tea leaves. But this wasn't good enough for the producers, and so they then required him to upgrade his tickets to first class. No problem for Nasubi, who had institutionalized himself to this way of life. And after winning a picture frame, a foxkin, and a live octopus, Nasubi was a first-class passenger. It was finally over for Nasubi. He'd won. Producers blindfolded him and led him into his final room. Unbeknownst to Nasubi, the 4 walls of this room were collapsible, and behind them sat a live studio audience. As soon as Nasubi was left alone in his final room, habit kicked in, and he quickly undressed. After a dramatic countdown, the walls collapsed, and Nasubi was met with the cheering applause of thousands of people. The look of shock on his face was both cathartic and sad to watch. At this point, Nasubi had been living this lifestyle for 15 months. Having barely spoken to another human being, he applied to 75,000 magazine contests, averaging 1,250 applications per week and nearly 200 applications per day. It took him several minutes to register what was happening. It's difficult to imagine the thoughts that must have been going through his mind in these moments. The show, Susunu Denpa Shonen, was intended to be comedic, featuring a laugh track to punctuate almost every moment featured in a broadcast. Even during the moments where Nasubi became visibly distraught, frustrated, and hopeless, the live stream would overlay silly sound effects to signal the viewer that his suffering is their entertainment, escorting them away from the intuitive response of pity. Susunu Denpa Shonen went on to film 3 more endurance experiments before being canceled in 2002 due to the torturous nature of their content. Some of the other contests included requiring contestants to hitchhike across Africa, build a raft on a deserted island, and float back to Tokyo, and finally, sit in a pitch-black room only to receive light and food whenever their favorite baseball team won a game. So the question many of you may have now is what happened to Nasubi. Did he achieve the fame and fortune he was promised for his remarkable endurance? Well, yes and no. His journal of experiences, titled Nasubi's Prize Contest Life Diary, went on to be published and reached bestseller status. And despite not becoming the world-famous comedian he had hoped to become, he did find small success in television and film acting. But it's undeniable the psychological toll the live stream had on Nasubi because he spent 15 months entirely naked. If you enjoyed this video and look forward to similar content, please consider subscribing.